You've heard of a K-shaped economy. You've heard of a V-shape, a U-shape, an L-shape, maybe even a W if you were paying attention during 2020. But there's a shape we're actually living in right now that almost nobody is talking about clearly, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's a G. Stick with me for the next few minutes, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand why your paycheck feels smaller even though the number on it went up. Why the stock market keeps hitting records while your friends keep getting laid off. Why the official numbers keep saying everything is fine while the actual mood of the country feels like something is very, very wrong. And why none of the letters you already know describe it. Let me back up. When economists talk about recoveries, they reach for letters because shapes are easy to picture. A V shape is a sharp crash followed by a sharp recovery, down hard, up hard. A U shape is the same idea but slower. You sit at the bottom for a while before climbing out. An L shape is the scary one. You crash and you just stay there. A W shape is a fake recovery. Crash, crash again, then climb for real. And the K shape, which got famous after 2020, is when the recovery splits in two. The top half goes up, the bottom half goes down. Same country, two completely different experiences. For a while, the K shape felt like it explained things. Rich people did great, everyone else didn't. End of story. But here's what I noticed. If you actually look at the data over the last few years, the K shape stopped lining up around 2023. Because the top of the K kept going up, but the bottom of the K stopped going down. It started doing something else. It started going in a circle. That's the G. Picture the letter G in your head. It starts as a circle, a loop. You go up, you come around, you come back down, you end up almost exactly where you started. Do you see where I'm starting? But not quite, because the G has that little inward hook at the bottom. The line ends pointing back toward the center, trapped, unable to complete the loop. That's the economy most people are actually living in. You work harder, you earn more on paper, you move up, and then somehow, 12 months later, you're standing in the same place you started. Sometimes worse, sometimes hooked back inward with less room to move than before. You're running inside the loop. You're running inside the loop. Let me show you what I mean with one number. Between 2021 and 2024, average wages in the US grew by roughly 15%. Sounds great, right? But in that same window, the cost of the basket of things a working household actually buys, things like rent, groceries, insurance, childcare, healthcare, grew by somewhere between 20 and 25%, depending on which study you trust. That's BLS data. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check it yourself. Notice what that means. The worker got a raise. The number on their paycheck genuinely went up. And yet they ended the year with less buying power than they started with. They didn't lose. They didn't fall. They didn't get fired. They just went around the loop and ended up a few feet behind where they started. Now do the same exercise with housing. In 2019, the median American household needed roughly 30% of its income to afford the median home. By 2024, that number had climbed past 45% in most major metros. Wages went up. Home prices went up faster. Interest rates went up on top of that. So a household earning more money in absolute terms can afford less house than they could 5 years ago. So a household earning more money in absolute terms can afford less house than they could 5 years ago. That's not a K. A K would mean they're falling. They're not falling. They're grunting in place inside a loop that keeps tightening. That's a G. And here's where it gets interesting, because the same shape shows up at almost every level of the economy except the very top. Small business owners. Revenue up, margins down. Net result, same place. College graduates, higher starting salaries than ever, higher debt than ever, higher rent than ever. Net result, the same financial position their parents had at 25, except delayed by a decade. Retirees. Portfolios at all-time highs. Cost of healthcare and assisted living rising faster than portfolio returns. Net result, the loop. And then there's the version of this that I find hardest to look at. I have a friend who has made over $400,000 a year for 3 years straight. Senior engineer at a name brand company. He still doesn't own a home. He still can't tell you with a straight face that he's getting ahead. He's not bad with money. He's not reckless. He's not unlucky. He's just running inside the loop at a higher altitude than most people, but inside the same loop. And the loop at his altitude has tech layoffs every 6 months, equity that vests slower than his rent rises, and a city where a starter home now costs what a mansion cost when his parents were his age. And the loop at his altitude, that's the texture I'm trying to point at. It's not poverty. It's not failure. It's motion without progress, effort without escape, a loop that closes in on itself instead of opening up. And this is the part I think matters the most. The G shape is psychologically different from every other letter. The G shape, a V is exhausting but hopeful. You crashed, but you're climbing. A U is slow but believable. You're stuck, but you can see the path out. An L is brutal but honest. Everyone agrees things are bad. A K is unfair but visible. You can point at the people doing well and say, that's where the money went. But a G? A G is gaslighting. Because on paper, you're not failing. Your numbers are going up. Your salary, your portfolio, your title, your square footage, everything is technically improving. And yet, you wake up every morning feeling like you're losing ground. The official statistics say the economy is strong, GDP up, unemployment low, markets at records. And meanwhile, the actual texture of daily life for most people feels worse than it did 5 years ago. That gap, that impossible gap between what the data says and what your life feels like. That's the inward hook of the G. So who is the G good for? Because every economic shape has winners. Even an L shape has winners, the people who bought at the bottom. Even an L shape has winners of the G are the people who own the loop itself. And I want to be specific about what that means, because the people who own the loop can sound abstract if I leave it there. So let me give you one concrete example. It's not the whole story, it's just the most visible version of a pattern that shows up everywhere. Think about your rent. Think about your rent. In 2010, the median American renter sent their rent check to an individual landlord, a person, maybe a couple, maybe a small family business that owned a few units. In 2024, an increasing share of renters in major metros, in some cities over 25%, send their rent check to a corporate landlord. In 2024, an increasing share of renters in major, often a private equity fund, often using software like RealPage, which uses algorithms to set rents across thousands of units at the same time. The Department of Justice is currently suing them. You can look it up, but RealPage is just the headline version. Underneath it is a bigger pattern. Housing supply is constrained by zoning. Demand is amplified by demographics. Ownership of existing stock is consolidating into fewer and fewer hands. The algorithm is just the part you can see. So the renter is working harder, earning more, paying more. But the entity collecting that rent isn't a person anymore. It's a system. And the system is optimized in ways an individual landlord never could be. That's the loop. The renter runs in place inside it. The owner of the loop captures the difference between what the renter earns and what the renter spends. And every year, the system tightens the gap a little more. Now multiply that pattern across every part of your life: your streaming subscriptions, your insurance, your phone plan, your software tools at work, your groceries from chains that use the same pricing algorithms, your healthcare, your car payment. Every one of those is a loop. Every one of those used to be a transaction between you and a person, or you and a small company. And every one of those is now, increasingly, a subscription to a system owned by someone you'll never meet. You're not poor. You're not failing. You're paying rent to exist in a system designed to recycle your effort back to someone else. That's the G-shape economy in one sentence. Now I want to pause here, because I know what this video sounds like at this point. It sounds heavy. It sounds like the kind of video that diagnoses something dark and then leaves you sitting with it. So before I go any further, I want to say something I think most videos like this skip. If you're running inside the loop right now, that is not a failure of yours. The loop is designed to be hard to escape. It is designed by people with more capital, more data, and more lawyers than you are ever going to have. It is designed to feel like the natural state of things, so that running inside it feels like just how life works. The fact that you're tired is not a character flaw. The fact that you can't seem to get ahead is not a budgeting problem. The fact that the numbers say you're fine while your life says you're not, that is not you being ungrateful or dramatic. That is the shape doing exactly what the shape is built to do. Seeing it clearly is itself a form of progress, because you can't step outside something you can't see. And most people are still trying to navigate this economy with maps from a different era, which is why everyone feels crazy and nobody feels heard. Okay. Now let me tell you what I've actually noticed about the people who have stepped outside the loop, or at least loosened it over the last decade. Because I'm not going to end this video pretending I have a clean solution. I don't. I don't. But I have noticed one pattern, and it's not what most personal finance videos tell you. It's not skip the latte. It's not start a side hustle. It's not invest in index funds. It's one thing: they stopped getting paid for time. That's the pattern. Every person I've watched genuinely loosen the loop in the last 10 years did some version of the same move. They figured out how to get paid for an output, an asset, or an outcome instead of an hour. Let me give you what this actually looks like in practice. I know a graphic designer who, for 10 years, charged by the hour. She was good, she was busy, she was tired. And every year, her income hit a ceiling because there are only so many hours in a week, and the people paying her had every incentive to keep her hourly rate from rising too fast. 3 years ago, she switched. Same work, same clients mostly. But she stopped quoting hours and started quoting deliverables. A logo package, fixed price. A website, fixed price. A brand identity system, fixed price. Her income went up roughly 40% in the first year. Not because she worked harder, because she stopped letting her time be the unit of value. The clients didn't care. The clients never cared about her hours. They cared about the result. She just stopped pricing herself the way the loop wanted her to be priced. That's one version. The other versions look different on the surface, but share the same structural move. A writer who stopped freelancing and started building a newsletter she owns. A contractor who stopped charging day rates and started taking equity in the projects he builds. An accountant who stopped doing returns one at a time and built a small software tool that does part of the job at scale. In every case, the move is the same. Break the link between your time and your income, because hourly pay is the perfect input for the G. It's predictable, it's capable, it's exactly the kind of revenue stream the loop is designed to extract from. The moment that link breaks, the loop loses its grip on you. That's the only general thing I'm willing to say about escape, because everything else depends on your situation. But that one thing is real. And once you see it, you start evaluating opportunities differently. Not how much does this pay, but is this paying me for time or for something else? So here's where I land. Not catastrophe, not collapse, just a shape. Wages up, buying power flat. Portfolios up, affordability down. Effort up, ground gained zero. A loop you run inside while the people who own the loop collect the difference. An economy that looks like a recovery on paper and feels like a slow squeeze in your actual life. And a hook at the bottom of the letter that pulls you back inward every time you think you're about to break out. That's the shape. That's the texture. That's the gap between the headlines and your life. So what shape do you think we're in? If you disagree with the G, tell me what letter you'd pick instead and why. I read the comments. I argue back. Sometimes I change my mind. And if this video made something click for you, the next one goes one layer deeper. It's about 3 specific moves the people who got out actually made. And I'll tell you up front, one of them is the exact opposite of what every personal finance book on the bestseller list tells you to do. It's the move almost nobody talks about, and the one that mattered most. Subscribe if you want to catch it. See you there.